Hi students, welcome to BioBytes. We will start off our IGCSE series with Chapter 1, Classification. So let's look at the keywords that are going to appear in this video. As you all know, keywords are really important for IGCSE and you need to study them word for word from the boxes given in your textbook. They will come in the form of 1 marks in your theory papers as definitions, and you need to write them word for word to get that mark. So movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, nutrition, species, dry mass, binomial system, fertile and infertile are the keywords in this video. So let's start off with what are the 7 basic characteristics that all living organisms show. So there is a great mnemonic called Mrs. Gren, which allows you to easily remember these characteristics. The first one is movement. So movement is basically the ability of any organism to change its position or place. So we have seen that plants and animals can do this in varying degrees. Respiration is a chemical reaction. Basically, it is the oxidative breakdown of glucose to release energy for metabolism. Sensitivity is basically the ability of an organism to detect and respond to any change in its internal or external environment. So the internal environment can be within a cell or within the body, and the external environment involves the surroundings. G is growth, and growth is defined as a permanent increase in size and dry mass. Now, dry mass is the mass of an organism when it has no water content. So, if you see an increase in size, like cellular size, and increase in dry mass, that is the weight without any water, you can classify that as growth. Reproduction simply involves making more organisms of the same kind, of the same species. Excretion involves the removal of waste products of metabolism. And lastly, nutrition involves the food that is taken in by an organism for an energy source. So these are the 7 basic characteristics that all living organisms show. So now we look at cellular characteristics. So in addition to showing the 7 broad characteristics of life, all living organisms are cellular. We know that. So they have these common factors, even though they might not be exactly identical. So all cells have a jelly-like cytoplasm. They have an outer covering called the plasma membrane, which is semi-permeable. They have genetic material in the form of DNA. They are going to have ribosomes, which are going to be making proteins for various metabolic reactions in the cell. And all cells are going to have enzymes, which are going to help in metabolism as well. Now let's move on to the classification systems. How are we grouping the various plants, animals, unicellular, multicellular organisms that we find in our environment? So simply put, if you take animals or plants or any other organisms and group them together based on how similar they are, that is the basis of the classification system. So in order to identify what the structure is, why does it relate to this particular function, this grouping helps us understand these things better. So what we understood in the purpose of classification was that the more closely related a particular species are, you can put them in the same group. So with the help of fossil studies, with the help of DNA technology, we started to study evolution, and we found that the species that are very close to each other, the organisms in similar genuses, all descended from what is known as a common ancestor in their past. So this common ancestor need not be alive today, but that common ancestor gave a variety of characteristics which is shown by all the different species in a particular group. So when we define species, we mean that they are a group of organisms that can reproduce with each other to produce fertile offsprings. The key word here is fertile. So Being fertile or fertility means that an organisms can reproduce. So infertile in the other meaning means that the organism cannot produce offsprings. So this does not mean that two different species in the same genus cannot reproduce. They can, but they will not produce fertile offsprings. So when we look at the broad classifications that human beings have come up with, we are creatures of habit. So we like to put things in boxes. So the largest group is called the kingdom, followed by phylum, class, order, family, genus, and the smallest group involves the species. So let us look at the example of the genus Panthera to study fertility and infertility. So Panthera is basically a genus that involves your large cats like your lion, tiger, snow leopard, jaguar, leopard, etc. So you might notice common characteristics among all of them that classify them in the same genus, but they are different species because they have certain unique characteristics, and mainly if different species in the same genus have offsprings, those offsprings will be sterile or infertile. So let us take the example of the tigon. So the tigon is an infertile offspring that is born to a male tiger and a female lion. So the offspring shares characteristics of both the lion and tiger, but they are sterile. They will not be able to produce more of its species. So the liger, on the other hand, is when a male lion and a female tiger reproduce, and the same rule holds. They also produce infertile offsprings. The mule is another example of an animal which is born to a horse and the donkey. Now, they are quite fit individuals. They are able to assist us with a wide variety of tasks like carrying weight, but mules are also sterile. So if you look at different species on their own, if a lion, Panthera leo, has an offspring with another lion, basically another animal in the same species, they will have lion cubs which will be fertile, which can then go on to mate and reproduce. So now we will move on to the binomial system, the naming system. How do we go about assigning names to the different organisms that we put into groups? So the term binomial, bi means two and nomial in Latin means name. So this is basically a two-name classification system. So the first name involves the genus name and the second name is the species name. So this is written in Latin so that it avoids confusion. People from all over the world, scientists from all over the world can follow the same name and not get confused with their regional languages. So there are certain rules when it comes to writing down the scientific name. So the genus should always be capitalized, if you notice, and the species name should always be in small. So when you are printing the scientific name in textbooks or in other publications, italicizing it gives you the indication that you are expressing the scientific name. At the same time, if you want to write it down, you can underline the genus name and the species name separately. So these three rules are the broad rules to be followed while writing a scientific name. Okay, so with that, we have come to the end of the video. Please like, share, and subscribe to BioBytes.